But let's return now to the claims that a Russian spy ship stopped at sites around wind farms off the Scottish coast in order to gather intelligence. The former Deputy Chief of Defence Staff, Sir Simon Mayall, joins us now. Simon, lovely to see you this morning. How concerned should we be about this? And more importantly, is this a new development? Have the Russians not done this before?
They've done it for many years, as did the Soviets before them. I think what's different, Neil, is, of course, the context. When the Soviets were doing the so-called trawlers all over the North Sea, they were doing exactly the same job, intelligence, checking out vulnerabilities, gathering information, etc. But we knew that was they were clear and present danger, there were plans, etc. And we hadn't invested so much in undersea vulnerabilities in both energy and intelligence. The new thing, of course, is now we have a Russia that's carrying out perfectly legitimate, some of it, intelligence. We do it as well, the Americans around Taiwan, ourselves, etc. But now we have Russia as you know, a potential genuine enemy. And, of course, we've increased our vulnerability.
Just on what we're looking at the moment, though, the balaclavaed, you know, assault rifle carrying individual. I mean, the Russians are not hiding this particularly well, are they?
Well, they're not really, but you know, it's the act of an unfriendly nation to turn your transmitters off. Yeah. You know, that clearly says we're doing something clandestine. You know, our capacity to track them is often difficult. We've only got so many assets out there. But the reality is that because this is of concern to all, you know, to Denmark, to Norway, to NATO, to the European Union, we will be having a reasonable handle on this. It just happens that we've broken a story about this particular one. But as you say, the fact that you've got an armed person on board just shows you that they have a... This is genuinely the act of an unfriendly state going about its business, trying to work out our vulnerabilities as part of whatever contingency plan Mr. Putin may be putting together if the worst came to the worst.
I mean, it is incredibly brazen, if nothing else. But when we talk about increasing our underwater vulnerabilities, what are we talking about? Is it basically communications?
It's a lot of communication, but it's a lot of gas. We saw the attack on Nord Stream 1, as you well remember, Neil. So these things, which are, you know, hugely efficient way of, you know, transporting energy, are a vulnerability where anything unpleasant happen. And whether it's sabotage, whether it's you know, somebody who does it, we still haven't pinned the tail on that particular donkey who was responsible for it. But any break in either communications, intelligence, or energy has an instant impact. And some of it can, of course, be deniable.
Of course. But can anything be done to stop this sort of surveillance, particularly if it's taking place in international waters?
Well, you can shadow it. You can let people know. You can diplomatically signal that were people to do anything harmful. You know, everybody else has vulnerabilities as well. And as I say, NATO and the headquarters at NATO will have a very, very, very firm handle on what's going on. And we will have our own counter-cyber plans. But again, this is where the context changes. For many years, we assumed we could lay these cables, intelligence, communications, energy, in a benign geopolitical environment, and that is absolutely no longer the case.
Do we have the naval assets to be able to protect that infrastructure? The Navy has, over the past few years, seen an awful lot of ships being retired from service.
I would argue not. Okay. I think we do not, you know, a ship can only be in one place at a time.
Indeed.
And if you've got a number, this is just one example. There are many. The Russians have always invested in these intelligence-gathering maritime assets. So to actually track them, make it very clear, ride them off, and actually begin to, of course, to also collect information on them, does require you to get quite close. So, again, this will be a NATO, you know, allies will be involved in this surveillance operation, the Danes, the Norwegians, the Dutch, etc. All of us who have a vested interest in the area of the North Sea and the Baltic. Security.
You mentioned earlier cyber, and clearly, you know, with the Russians gathering intelligence, the Russians' belligerence, you know, on the eastern frontier of Europe. I mean, are we in essence in a war in all but name right now?
I think many of us would argue we are. It's not a shooting war, and the vulnerabilities are often not just your armed forces. They are, you know, the things that keep modern society moving. Hence, of course, why Putin attacked all the energy and the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. This ability to bring, you know, normal society to a halt by tackling all, you know, communications and you know, all the cyber control links is a real threat. And you know, Putin is to an extent running out of options. The Russian approach, you know, historically is to, you know, signal here, do something else there, raise the stakes, escalate to de-escalate, etc. So it is difficult to know what's going through the mindset of Putin and his allies when they confront the failures on the ground in Ukraine at the moment and the prospect of a Ukrainian counter-offensive sometime in the spring.
Well, let's see what happens with that counter-offensive. Sir Simon Mayall, great to have you in the studio this morning. Thanks for being here.